Okay, I think we are about to go live now. Yes, we are live. So we are live on YouTube, and very soon we shall be live on WAF TV as well. Okay, I think we are about to go. Okay, so we are a minute to from starting. Meanwhile, we're just about to go live on WAF TV as well. Jerry sir, any questions that you get? All right, please share whether on the comments on WAF TV or on YouTube, or directly on the comments on the email, on WhatsApp. Just copy and paste in the chat. All right. Apart from the question that you already shared. Okay. All right. So we are live now. So we should begin moment the clock strikes 5. All right. So Kiran ma'am, I hope you are on standby.
Ready.
Great. Das ist fantastisch. Okay.
It's 5 o'clock.
Kiran ma'am, all yours.
Good evening, friends, and a warm welcome to the WAF Gurus webinar episode 25. Episode 26. We simply call it the WAFinar, and this episode is powered by Abhinav Immigration Services. Today, we shall discuss the issue of Russia-Ukraine crisis and its impact on global mobility for executives and business persons. And at this point, I would request Team WAF to share the program details. You are watching the WAF Gurus webinar 26th of the WAF Gurus live series, which was started in March 2020, in the very first week of the lockdown itself. By June 2020, the viewership had crossed the 1 million mark for WAF Guru Live, and it continues to rise. This WAFinar, as we call it, powered by Abhinav Immigration Services, is happening at a time when we thought life was bouncing back to normal and in full swing. But we seem to have been hit by the current war crisis in one way or the other. And that's just what we shall be discussing today. Russia-Ukraine crisis and its impact on global mobility for executives and business persons. And to discuss this, we have with us some very impressive speakers. The first, Mr. Ashish Saraf, founder and CEO of Novi.com. He is an entrepreneur with a demonstrated history of working in the real estate and investment management industry. He is skilled in identifying market gaps, sales, product development, management, risk management, and business development. He holds a Master of Business Administration, MBA, focused in business administration and management, general, from the London Business School. With a strong passion for consumer experience, only last year, his venture, Aretha Capital Partners, a leading investment firm, announced the launch of Novi.com, a one-of-its-kind integrated platform for global retail estate buying and investing. He is currently building Novi Go Buy and Novi Buy to Let to make multiple real estate agents more accessible and affordable for retail buyers that can unlock billions in capital lying unused. Real estate is the largest and among the oldest industry, and technology is just starting to scratch the surface of possible improvements in construction, financing, sales, ownership, asset management, disposals, refinancing, and many more domains. Novi, which means new in Russian. The core objective being, how can we bring about new changes and unlock trillions in global wealth across the world for better use of this wealth? Our second speaker is Mr. Ajay Sharma, President, Abhinav Immigration Services. He's a business economist. From Delhi University, he did his master's in 1985. He graduated in commerce from Delhi University in 1983. He is a serial entrepreneur. He is amongst the pioneers of immigration and visa consultancy services in India since 1994. His strengths include consultancy and advisory services on citizenship by investment programs, startup visa programs, residency visa programs for skilled professionals, businessmen, and high net worth individuals. A globetrotter and an affluent speaker, he's an all cross-culture expert. He's a featured author in publications like Economic Times and is often quoted in global mobility, immigration, jobs overseas. He likes to write on subjects as diverse as human rights and relations, gender equality, and international relations. He believes in making and keeping relations for life. His leisure time is occupied by watching light entertainment web series and cinema. And then, of course, we have the man behind this show, Anuj Buglani, the founder and CEO at World Auto Forum, which connects the auto and mobility industries in 125 countries. He has also worked with Honda Cars and General Motors. Last year, he launched WAF Ventures, the global investment and advisory arm of WAF, where they work with startups, investors, VC, and PE firms around the world. A graduate in engineering, he did his MBA from IIT Delhi and studied law at the Faculty of Law, Delhi University. And now, let me introduce you to our partners. Annual OEM Gold Partners, Morris Garages, MG, and Volkswagen. Annual Gold Partner, Gallups Motors, One Moto India, and Abbott. Annual Partners, Focus Engineering India and Focus Technologies Dubai, and motoruncle.com. And our media partners, Patriot and WAF TV. So over to you, Anuj.
Thanks a ton, Kiran ma'am, really appreciate. So friends, without further ado, let's take a deep dive in the program and just sharing a couple of points of discussion. So we know what Russian-Ukraine crisis, it has panned out. It's been a month of the conflict, and we are still amidst the pandemic, and now we know we have another challenge of the war and geopolitical tensions. Political commentators say that the geopolitics of Europe and the world just might change permanently. The supply chains have further strained and become even more unpredictable. Crude is not the only commodity seeing sharp rise in prices. And we're also seeing this polarization of the world, where we're seeing majority countries which are against one particular country. So, several American, Japanese, European, South Korean companies have ceased manufacturing operations and economic activity at Russia. Money flow payment systems have been severely affected. Record sanctions have been slapped. So this is the scenario, and suggested points for discussion can be which we received as concerns from the WAF community. In fact, just now only, I was, we were just typing out the questions which we have received, and if you want to share more questions, you can just go on the WAF TV. You can put in the comments, or you can just send a message to us via our website. You can WhatsApp us. You can send us an email as per your convenience. So a couple of points. Safe movement and passage of the employees and workers in the management. What are the do's, don'ts, caveats for the professionals working across Europe and especially in and around the war-torn countries? How does the coordination with the local embassy office work, in case you need to reach out to them, and how to maximize the support and the effectiveness? And what should be our strategy? A lot of people might be in the middle of an immigration or a work travel, movement of people. We've already seen this, the SCM blues, moving of goods. So in all this context, it's not just the business executives, it's also their families. There are elders, there are children, there are women. So how to maximize the safety of the family of the working professional, especially children, women, and seniors. So these are the points. And before I forget, for the attendees who are watching us live, we also have this beautiful opportunity. We are giving 1 month free service of WAF CXO Jobs service. You just need to go to WAF CXO Jobs, Google WAF CXO Jobs, come here, just put over here your brief profile, name, age, everything, complete it, and it will come to us. And whatever requests we receive from WAF CXO Jobs page on our website during the duration of the program, for all of you, it's a 1 month free WAF CXO Jobs service. All right. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and let's start the discussion by getting in Ajay ji, who is the president of India's, in fact, world's leading immigration services company. He has been, he has helped immigrate thousands or probably lakhs of people, if I may stand corrected, across the world. He's been doing this for almost 3 decades now. So much of experience he has in movement of people and goods and immigration. So Ajay ji, given the context, given that we are still in the middle of a pandemic, given this geopolitical tension, what are your very clear cut do's and don'ts for the traveling or the immigrating professional and their families?
See, first of all, thank you very much, Anuj, for having me on your show. And I must compliment you for having this platform. And I was observing, how in the normal search itself, your forum on majority of subjects related to automobiles always comes on top in the Google search. So fantastic work for all your stakeholders that your platform is doing. Please keep on doing the great work. And thank you for having me for your esteemed audience and listeners. Coming to the topic, actually speaking, the situation in terms of global mobility is not as alarming from immigration point of view or otherwise movement as it may sound to an ordinary person. The only areas where there is restriction is, as we know, Russia and Ukraine. So those are the two areas that the flying is very, very restrictive. The other significant difference would have come in is that those who are traveling specifically using, who use the airlines that used Russian airspace to travel over to Pacific and other Asian countries. So the detour would have meant flying hours distance of, maybe depending on the destination, anywhere between 2.5 to 4 hours. So you take away that, and otherwise, in terms of movement, there's not much of a difference. As a matter of fact, the only restriction would be the ones that would have been caused on account of COVID. Even that situation is now improving all over. As we know, even India is permitting the international travels from March 27th or 28th, perhaps. So there is no restriction in terms of movement. If you're even, you're traveling to Europe, for example. So within Europe, outside of these couple of countries that are under a lot of stress, the movement is quite free. There's no restriction of any kind. And in fact, the overall scenario, from the immigration perspective, let me explain the overall situation, the way it might mean to, in layman's language. See, when we talk of immigration, we talk of demographics. And in the demographic context, the significant shift that's happening in the refugee class, where you have millions of unfortunate Ukrainians, even in some cases Russians. Moving across as refugees to majority of European countries. So that is a different class of category of immigrants altogether. And in general, in context to immigration as a word, for example, you're talking of employees, workers, management. So skilled professionals, for example, their immigration continues as it is. The application process continues as it is. Doesn't matter which major country, be it in Europe you're talking about, or be it in Canada, USA, UK, New Zealand, Australia. So all these countries are carrying on with their normal processing. Yes, there is a delay, but that delay is on account of COVID, backlog. It's not on account of Ukraine and Russian war. So in that context, there's no such restriction in making new applications or processing of older application. The process continues as it is. So if you're a professional, you're traveling across Europe, in case of war-torn countries, Ukraine and Russia as it is, it's best avoided. And I doubt in Russia as it is, there are no flights going in and coming out. Even Ukraine is a restrictive area. So I don't think that's really much of a situation. And in rest of Europe as it is, the moment if you have a visa, you're traveling across with one country's visa, you're traveling across whole of Schengen countries. So that's not a difficult situation also. Yes, it's always advisable under the current circumstances, not only current circumstances, we always advise all our clients that, whenever you go overseas, you must always, whether as a student or a normal traveler, a business traveler, it makes sense to register yourself with the local consulate, even in the normal course that you are visiting that particular country. So that helps even the consulates or the embassies to help you out in case of emergency, because they have your contacts available. In brief, in context to global mobility, in context to immigration, in context to application processing, in context to filing of new applications, in context also to travel across the world, except for a couple of these countries and beyond additional traveling distance, there is no cause of concern. There is no restriction of any kind.
Great. That's very nice to know, Ajayji, that as of now, there is no problem and it's pretty smooth. And as you mentioned, that possibly the pandemic still might be a bigger concern and an issue from a health perspective, and also the backlog perspective, as you mentioned.
That's right.
This very interesting point that you mentioned of the local consulate. So typically, if one actually sees, if one believes in a digital India or digitization of the records, if I'm traveling to any other country, the government, the immigration, they all have my data any which ways. So first of all, why is there a requirement for an additional registration? Why can't the data be there with the local consulate that, hey, this person has landed, in this country. I have the data. They immigrated out and, they have just landed here. And that's number one. Number two, what is the best way to have this thing recorded? Should it be through the website of the Indian consulate or some central system, some apps one can download, or one has to do the plain phone call? What do you suggest?
See, first and foremost, there's no such requirement as in requirement. That when you travel, you must register yourself in local consulate or high commission. But it always helps you in doing it, and you can always do it online. All the consulates or websites will have this provision whereby you can inform them and update your records related to the place of residence, for example, the hotel, the date of travels. So you can always do that online. Why it's preferable is that I've traveled in last 30 years lots and lots of countries.
Probably we should ask you which are the countries that are still left. That's an easier way to answer.
So the African side is perhaps the only one that's left.
All
but
right.
Otherwise, a majority of countries across the world I've traveled to. And
Antarctica is also covered. Antarctica is also checked.
Well, that is, I think, on the horizon to more as a travel, and I hope the immigration starts there, and we'll go there. So we'll hope not, and we go there. And for the environment's sake, I hope immigration doesn't start there.
Absolutely.
So it's not requirement, but interestingly, it always makes sense to register yourself. Like I said, having traveled globally, I often find that, of course, my the stakeholders I'm meeting, stakeholders I'm visiting, they know about my whereabouts. Perhaps my family knows about my whereabouts, but something unexpected may happen, and life is full of surprises. At that time, to have the number of your local consulate saved really helps, and a single call perhaps can get the entire machinery working to help you out.
Great, fair enough. That's a very important piece of information, friends. As you just heard, Ajayji, a very experienced person, if he's saying this, then it makes all the very sense. So whenever you're traveling, do not forget this point of registering yourself with the local consulate, and it's very easy to do it online. Just Google, find the link, and just do it. All right. So switching gears now and coming to Ashish ji, who's in Europe right now and is very kind enough to, agree. It's just starting of the business hours there. So Ashish ji is leading business fund, and he's also deeply involved in movement of people and goods. So Ashish ji, first of all, something on the economy side. We've seen the kind of sanctions being put. We're seeing how the supply chains are further, under strain because of this scenario. What are your thoughts? How long would it take? And what are the few do's and don'ts for the business people managing businesses in Europe and around the affected countries?
Well, Anuj, firstly, thanks for having me on this show. Ajay ji is more, he knows everything about immigration and movement. So I'll kind of keep restricted to my area of expertise. And look, in the last decade or so, what I've seen is that the world is kind of becoming a one place. But that has changed in the last 2 months, and there seems to be a little bit of a polarization between the East and the West. There are talks of who is in which camp, so on and so forth. And I believe that this is here to stay. The conflict is likely to be a very slow wound. It's not ending anytime soon. There is a crisis, but with every crisis, there is an opportunity. From an economic standpoint, I do believe that it's in the interest of all parties to kind of come together and be on the same page, because it doesn't really help anyone, because both sides of the world depend a lot on each other. For example, East has always been a big provider of goods and services to the West. And that is one of the reasons why Western inflation has been under 2% for the last 4 decades. Now, if those production facilities or service facilities were to be moved to the West, given the sharp contrast in the labor cost to produce the same products and services, inflation would hit the roof in the West. So no one really wants that. I mean, imagine if we stop importing all the clothes from Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, and all the semiconductors from China, and produce it in Europe or the US, every product cost will go up by 100, 200%. And that would be a huge spike in inflation. So no one really wants that. The effect on crude is something which we've already seen, and which will be a spillover across all the product categories, because oil is, of course, the most important factor in shipping products from one place to another. So there is an economic pain in the horizon. How big it's going to be would depend on how all the parties take this over the next few months. I think sanity will prevail, and this will come to a stop very soon. But I think it also presents an opportunity for a country like India, which has traditionally been a provider of skilled labor. And I was hearing Ajayji speak about the immigration, nothing has changed. But that's because large part of the immigration from India has always been the employment category of people. And that continues to remain as is. But then there's a huge opportunity for the business community of India to start setting up base in Europe. And this is something which the Chinese have done very well. And you walk on any street in Europe, every third shop or every third company belongs to a Chinese person. And they've used the residency and citizenship by investment methods very well in the last 10 years, be it the Iberian region in Portugal and Spain, be it the Mediterranean in Cyprus and Greece, or be it any of the Western European countries, or even in the United Kingdom, depending upon who has the ability to invest how much. And I think that is an area which Indian SMEs should look very quickly and very strongly, because that is a very short window of opportunity, unfortunately, thanks to this crisis. And I don't know if the audience has been reading the news, but things like citizenship by investment of Caribbean countries. Now the EU is discussing removing all the Schengen access for those who acquire passports by investing. So that's kind of, a downside of this event. But having said that, they've also announced scrapping off the so-called golden visa, which is available to investors from across Asia and Middle East to migrate into Europe or set up businesses. And we've just got about 3 years to go. The sunset date for that is December of 2025. So this crisis has given rise to a relook at the opportunities which businesses could have in Europe. It's probably socio-political, but at the same time, the window is kind of closing in. So in all essence, this opportunity should be taken by Indian businesses. There is a huge opportunity to replace existing communities of business. And with the cost advantage and all the other resources that we have at our disposal, I think this is an opportunity worth looking at. But going for, as far as the other aspects are concerned on the socio-economic side, I think there's no real threat outside Ukraine or outside the Eastern European flank. Western Europe by default and the Iberian Peninsula, they sort of remain stable. The European Commission and the European Parliament has already started intervening with a lot of cash injection. So we don't see any threats in terms of economic pressures, although we do believe that the inflation would be a little higher than people are used to in this part of the world.
Fair enough. So, in fact, what we were thinking might be a concern. Actually, it can pan out as an opportunity, as Ashish ji just mentioned, that the window is becoming shorter and shorter for those various programs of residency or citizenship by investment, and which has really been harnessed by the Chinese community, and that can be a big potential for the other communities, whether it's Indian or other people in this region. So having said that, Ashish ji, what about the pressures on the supply chains? Because supply chains were already under huge pressure because of the pandemic. And in fact, in the mobility and the automotive industry, chip shortages is a clear and present challenge. And to add to this, this situation of Russia and Ukraine. So what would be some tips to manage the SCM challenge?
Well, I'll take both parts of that comment that you just generally made. The opportunity part, and I draw your attention to this morning's G7 announcement. Now, look at the opportunity which came out of this crisis. US has agreed in principle to provide another 15 BCM of natural gas to EU. Now that's almost, I would say, $15 billion monthly in new LNG and new contracts for American businesses, which is going out of Russian companies and will now be serviced by American companies. So this is the kind of opportunities which will arise out of these conflicts. It's about who goes and grabs them. Coming to your second point, supply chain is very likely to remain under pressure, mostly because of the rising crude prices, and that would indirectly or directly continue to impact all markets across the Western Hemisphere. And I think this would continue over the next 12 to 18 months, if not more.
Right. Fair enough. That's fair enough. So, Ajay ji, you want to add something to that?
Well, overall, Ashish ji made a very interesting point. And the Indian diaspora is strong across the world. Doesn't matter which area you're talking about. So which part of the world you're talking about. So Indian diaspora continues to be very strong. And only thing that I can say is that then I often say that, like Ashish said, that this leads to opportunity. First COVID and now, unfortunately, the war. will lead to very major demographic challenges for the entire Western world, and also including the Pacific side of the world. And because, you know, when one looks at the millions of unfortunate lives that have been lost during last couple of years, and one very significant aspect of this ongoing Russian-Ukraine conflict, and that which again is related to the demographic context, the population context, or the movement of professionals, as you may call it, is this. And then majority of those who are in the known have not really looked at this particular aspect very closely. It is this, that as far as Ukraine is concerned, as you know, the refugees in millions who have moved out till now, they are women, children, or men above 60, or men below 80. So a prime age of 18 to 60 continues to be in Ukraine fighting the war. And what it may mean to the global workforce is a very big unknown right now, because one doesn't know how far this war will go. And for everybody's sake, I hope this comes to an end as soon as possible. Russians are losing life. You know, by the way, Russia lost close to 1 million people in last 1 year itself. And that was a headliner just around a couple of months back to COVID and other situations. So that's a lot of people in a country like Russia. And look at now, Russians as well as Ukrainians. So a very major impact. And most unfortunately, it may turn out to be a positive thing for Indian professionals and Indian businessmen and Indian entrepreneurs. And for that matter, anybody who is outside of these two unfortunate countries is going to have because there's going to be a huge gap in the professional and trades skill set, which will be required to be filled up. And then there are no people who are going to be filling up these gaps. Keep in mind, Europe lost hundreds and thousands of people during COVID. America lost 1 million plus. Canada lost a lot many people, as did Australia. So, and we are all reading scary reports that are coming from Hong Kong, even as we talk. So, the demographic situations across the world were already disturbed, which went in favor of India as it is before this Ukraine and Russian conflict started. So there's a huge gap that's come into the global workforce right now because of events that have transpired in the last 2 years, and how this war will end, and how many and then we pray to the God that all men, whether Russian or Ukrainian, are able to get back to their families, live their lives. And then this comes to an end. But how far it goes, it depends on that. And should it prolong, then again, there'll be huge demand for professionals and tradesperson and workers to fill up that workforce gap that will come in. And that majorly comes in because of the English fluency that we have. That majorly comes in from two countries. One is India and second is Philippines. So overall, again, India will be a major gainer out of this current situation. Getting back to the golden visa that Ashishji talked about, yes, that has come with a window, but up to 2025 and in some cases where real estate investment is required, it has still a smaller window. So while professionals need not worry, entrepreneurs, even if they're not wanting to, outside of golden visas beyond 2025, there's a whole world out there where they can move out by opening their branches, their subsidiaries, or simply opening their offices in any of the countries where they're interested in starting their business, going there, or going in categories such as which are open for entrepreneurs, for businessmen. Like in UK, you have sole representative. That also is getting changed, by the way, next month. And so whether for startup visas, whether for intra-company transfer, whether for entrepreneurs, the options will continue to be available, as we move forward. There's no dearth of opportunity at all. And as far as my view goes, one should take advantage of the window opportunity that golden visas offer for those who can afford it. And those who cannot afford it in the immediate context, they have other windows available to immigrate, settle down, do business in other countries, and also move out as a professional. For Indians, there's a huge demand in the coming years. In fact, this demand is going to be so huge that we will not be able to fill it up.
Great. Fair enough, Ajay. So with that, just switching gears once again, and would like to just share my screen for just a brief insight in what kind of news is coming and how it's affecting our industry, specifically mobility and automotive. So please allow me to Google.
Please.
So you might feel you might feel we are flaunting. Well, actually we are. So if you Google World Auto
You
News,
deserve it.
oh, thank you so much. So if you Google World Auto News, first is autonews.com and second is us. So as you can see, we are above majority of the
Fantastic.
So going back, so we are at number 2 position at WAF. So when you look at the World Auto News here, it's full of the ramifications, repercussions. Just read this news. Renault shares are down after the company suspends Moscow plant. So we are seeing this big backlash from the West. They are shutting down operations. They're shutting down their offices in Russia. Look at this one. Automakers securing battery raw material. There's a mad rush because of the SEM blues, the SEM challenges. They are in a mad rush to go out for these materials and to just reserve them for business predictability. Similarly, just read this news. March US auto sales to tumble. There's a forecast by the leading researchers and experts of the industry. March US auto sales to tumble on rising inflation and Ukraine crisis. And this is backed by data. Just imagine. So all these things are happening across the world. It's, as Ashish ji had mentioned, it's a connected economy of the world, and the operations are getting affected. Just because of COVID in China, BMW has suspended operations. So there are so many factors which are disrupting the businesses. And even the people are saying, "Hey, we've had enough, man. What's next?"
See, there's a diplomacy vacuum, Anuj, right now, and one of the key factors which plays with demand supply is the purchasing power of people. Right. This morning, one of the most important kind of local news was that energy bills for most people have gone up by 150 to 200 euros a month. Mm-hmm. Right? It's kind of doubled up. Mm-hmm. We've been seeing interviews where pensioners, women, children, or even young professionals are complaining that my energy bill last month was 150 and this month is 290. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at how energy plays a very important part in the overall split between income and expenditure of the medium income people, 80% of the people in Europe make between 30 and 50,000 euros a year, and they live paycheck to paycheck. Now, of course, the GDP per capita is higher compared to the Eastern world. So by that standards, the overall quality of life is better. However, they still remain paycheck to paycheck because the overall cost of living is higher. They don't have the luxury of their bills going up by 10% every month. Because if I'm making 3,000 euros net of taxes this year, my expenditures are almost at 2,800, including mortgage, education, etc., etc. Now, if my energy bill suddenly takes up 200 extra euros, and then my food inflation becomes 20% simply because no more wheat is coming from Russia and Ukraine, which they are major suppliers, or because everything which was being produced in China is now more expensive given the crude oil prices. So all of that adds up. And when the cost of basic necessities add up, you start cutting down on comforts until you have enough money to pay for necessities. And that is where you see news like sales going down. So there's a ripple effect of whatever is happening today. Everyone will feel it. And going back to Ajayji's word is that I think on the professional mobility, it's always going to be there. But this opportunity is for the SMEs to go out and grab it.
Yep.
I think India has been lagging for the last 2 decades compared to China when it comes to businesses going and setting up base while remaining in India. Why do you think China has become so powerful? These 20,000 businesses who've set up in the last 10 years, they've not moved to Europe. They've got their whatever golden visas, etc., but they've set up business bases. So their businesses continue to remain in China and trade with Europe. That's where they have scaled up. Because if 90% of our immigration or 100% of our immigration is skilled labor, nothing is coming back to India. Yes, there could be foreign remittances once in a while for buying a property, but then the basic trade levels still remain low. I think that is where the huge opportunity for Indian businesses still remain.
Fair enough, Ashish. You couldn't agree more with you. And of course, I just highlighted this for everyone that, dependence on Russian fuel. So all these ramifications are happening. So all these geopolitical situations are panning out in the business world, and the governments are getting involved. The government heads are also concerned. Businesses are concerned, and it's a big issue. So I'll stop sharing my screen right here. So I think that's a very good deep dive we've got. I think brilliant insights, which we have. I think it would have been next to impossible, getting these insights from any other resource or channel, because we keep seeing whatever Western media keeps feeding us. So it's all in one particular flow, one track. But this 360-degree approach, this brilliant, elaborate analysis, I think it's really, really fine. I haven't come across any media channel or any media vehicle talking these beautiful, priceless things. So with that, gentlemen, if you allow, we can get into the Q&A mode, because we have received a few questions.
Yep.
So we can start answering those questions one by one. So let's take a deep dive. All right, they're on my, yeah. So thanks again, Jerry sir, for putting these on WhatsApp for me. So first question is from Mr. Subhash Kumar. He's saying that Europe, Western and Eastern, how do the geopolitics change when one is traveling for business and also for immigration in today's day and age because of the conflict and the pandemic? So the question is, Europe West and Europe East, how do the things change?
Well, actually, it depends. Europe East, so long as you do not include Ukraine and Russia into it, everything is life is absolutely normal. So eastern part of Europe, as we call it, and I've been to all these beautiful countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, so the entire Baltic belt, so Poland. So the travel, in between the western and the eastern part of Europe continues as it is. You just take out those two countries. I don't think anybody has any reason to be concerned. So you have a Schengen visa, you could be traveling all across from east to west and west to east when it comes to Europe. And of course, if you want to visit UK, you need a separate visa.
Absolutely. All right. You want to add something to that, Ashish ji, because you're sitting in Europe right now?
When you say Europe, it's a much larger belt. And when you say EU, it becomes a different discussion. Now, EU is a single market, as we all know. If you've got a Schengen visa or a residence permit in any of the European countries, you are absolutely flexible and perfect to travel all around. So there are no issues. And I just think that one would not lose much by avoiding the eastern flank for some time. Even from an economic standpoint, I think the opportunity lies in Central Europe and Western Europe, not so much in Eastern Europe and the Balkans. But other than that, you should be fine.
Fair enough. I think that's as candid as it can get. Okay, so the next question is from Ms. Renu Khanna. She's asking some basic do's and don'ts while traveling to the EU amidst this conflict. some basic do's and don'ts.
Well, to start with, if you're traveling, planning to travel in near future for business, you know, like I said, there's no restriction, there's no difficulty. But life is absolutely normal. Life is absolutely normal. But if you're planning to even go for, because we have peak tourist season coming up, and in June and July, May, June, July is when Indians travel the most to Europe and North America, all across the world. So if you're planning to go to Europe for tourism purposes, I would recommend that if you can look at an alternate destination in North America for the moment. You do not, in that case, need to look at do's and don'ts. So you could travel as it is, subject to COVID restrictions, and which some of the countries still have. And the Pacific is no issue at all. Australia and New Zealand have opened up openly. So if you are planning to go for tourism, if you can avoid Europe at this stage, it's advisable, though, like I said, there's no risk. But it's avoidable. If you're wanting to go for business, go only for the specific purpose which is intended, finish your visit and come back to your home country.
Fair enough. So stick to the job and come back on time. All right. So next question we'll take from Mr. Krishna Raju. He says that we thought supply chain's worst nightmare was over, but now it's this. So prices rising, supplies hit. What are your tips for procurement professionals? So Ashish, do you want to take this? Procurement professionals.
Plan ahead. Procurement professionals are going to have a challenge over the next 6 to 12 months, depending upon how the Eurasian things pan out. I think there's a lot of lip service going on, which is kind of media bashing. I don't think anyone intends to be as harsh on each other, because you don't live in an isolated world now. But there will be delays. So plan ahead, make provisions in place that you might not receive it on time or might not receive it at all.
I have an interesting viewpoint, which is more geopolitical in nature.
Sure.
And then I think the fact that it is coinciding with the visit of Chinese foreign minister to India today. So if you look at his travel itinerary since last 7 to 10 days, it's a very interesting itinerary. So it started from Europe, and it then went on to rest of the Asia, and it comes to India, and from here is going to Nepal, and then finally to China. But what I find most interesting is that because one thing that is one of my favorite saying, I don't believe in coincidences. So this is not a coincidence that all these visits are going around. So talking about this logistics procurement nightmare that one is talking about the supply chain challenges that are being talked about, everybody's getting impacted, whether one is a manufacturer or whether one is a recipient or a user. So the global community has started realizing that things have gone too far. And this visit that's going around, the role that's being played by the Turkish president and the role that's being played by China at this stage, this is my personal viewpoint. I don't think this is a coincidence, all these activities which are happening. And then the main reason for that is, of course, besides the energy prices, the supply chain management, logistics that really speaking the world is facing. So this is my view, that the diplomacy is really speaking. The reason again that Mr. Biden is today in Poland is I foresee that this entire situation should come to an end within next 15 days.
Next 15 days?
I personally feel so. I feel that the challenges that the world is facing are so huge. The economies, none of these, they are hardcore politicians.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Biden has to win his midterm elections, which are coming in, and with energy prices going where they are, he's not going to win them. And it's equally true for the French president, who is also facing a election very soon. So for the global community as such, the supply chain management issues which are leading to this high inflation means that they must bring this conflict to an end. So I personally, this is my assumption based on this. And again, this entire, all these people getting together in Europe yesterday, the G7, that again was not a coincidence. So this is diplomacy at its top right now, which is happening, with Chinese foreign minister also going around. And I personally also feel, and I'm proud to say that India is right now playing a very major role in bringing out this particular situation to a close. And that's why these trips could be happening. This is what I foresee. So my observation is that this entire situation is likely to come to an end, keeping in mind all these diplomatic efforts going on, and to respond to the procurement challenges within the next 15 days. Of course, the challenges will continue before another 6 months before shipping and everything starts coming back to normal.
Fantastic. So just like the farm laws were revoked, so you feel that the elections make things go away. As simple as that.
Exactly. It's hardcore politics everywhere.
All right. So let's move on to the next question by Mr. David Stanley. And he says that several students in Ukraine had complained at some point that it got difficult to contact the local consulate, the embassy. So what should one do in such a situation if one is stuck? Even you can't even contact the embassy, or the embassy is on radio silence or whatever.
The challenge in these situations is, and it is human nature. It's got nothing to do with the unfortunate Ukrainian students who got stuck. The human nature is such that unless we don't face the situation becomes so difficult, we don't move out. So at times, it makes sense to not simply depend on the government of the day or otherwise the consulate. So the situation was developing. It was already developing for almost 2-3 months. So everybody could see that diplomacy was failing. So perhaps, the movement could have started earlier. Perhaps the consulates could have also forewarned the students to move earlier than the movement started. But these things are very difficult to predict. And war is definitely difficult to predict. So really, there is no straight answer to that question. What students should do? Only thing in hindsight, what comes to my mind is perhaps the movement from both sides, from consulate, high commission side, as well as from student side. Perhaps the activity that was started after the invasion started or the conflict started. These days one gets confused whether the conflict is the word, whether invasion is the right word. So one has to be careful about even using the words.
Absolutely.
So I think it would have made a lot of sense for the learning as a mobility professional. The learning that I come out with is this, that both consulate, high commissions, and the citizens stuck in a conflict zone should perhaps act earlier than they did in this particular instance.
Right. Ashiji, something from your side on this?
Yeah, I think to build upon what Ajay just mentioned, and I did watch the situation very closely because there were Indian students involved. The embassies did release vacating note advisory 15 days before the first issues started. And as he rightly said, sometimes we are just too overconfident. We don't take things seriously. And then when things get bad, you need someone to blame. However, to be honest, I think the Indian embassy and the Indian government in the last few occasions of evacuations have done a fantastic job, much better than most developed countries would have done. I've seen it in COVID, and I this time as well. It's not easy to get 18,000 people out of a place. Governments do issue advisory. We often tend to overlook them. I hope this is a lesson for a lot of people, that next time there is an advisory, you don't shrug it off and act upon it, because a government won't evacuate you unless there is a reason. However, the advisory means that the reason is coming. Now, we as adult, intelligent human beings, we need to take cognizance of the fact that we need to act upon the advisory and not wait for the shit to hit the roof and then ask the government to come and pick me up.
Yeah,
So,
and get a free trip back home.
yeah. Well, whether it's free or not, I mean, look, it's not about $200, $300 of airfare. It's just about not acting at the right time. And this has happened even during COVID, when people were announcing, countries were announcing, we're going to shut down in 7 days. And I know people who said, no, they'll extend it. Don't worry, nothing will happen. So I can't give enough kudos to Indian embassies who have worked in this crisis or even during COVID. I think they've done a fantastic job, given that they have 1/10 of the resources that Western embassies have. And I've experienced American embassies evacuating. I've experienced British embassies evacuating. Sorry, I can't at all put a finger on Indian embassies doing a bad job.
And I think our embassy people are also pretty thick-skinned by now. You know, they face all the flack, they take all the abuses with a clear smile. So that's where they are pretty mature too.
I was very
Yeah, I mean,
closely
look, a
observing.
government's job is to provide services, and I think they're providing good services. And especially this crisis was an epitome of a crisis, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It is because of the Indian government's good relations that this was possible.
With both the countries, yeah.
Spot on.
So,
Right. In
I
fact,
think at sometimes we should appreciate good stuff and not just be critical about
yes,
everything.
I agree. Just like the
someone
Indian
does.
Railways, you know, there was a study that Indian Railways is more punctual than most of the trains in other parts of the world, but we are always seeing, yeah, India mein train late hi aati hai, something like that. So the next question is related to the present one. It's by Miss Manisha Dubey. She wants to ask that how to manage the situation in such a country in case of a communication, transport, ATM network breakdown. You know, as Ashish ji mentioned, when shit hits the fan. So when there's a complete breakdown of communication, ATMs, transport, what should be the survival guide?
Ashish, you want to take it or should I take it?
There's no real answer to that. I mean, think I'm a very old school person.
So you keep cash with you.
I always keep £100 or $100 somewhere hidden in my wallet. And as I say, I believe in acting before it's too late, because a total collapse comes only on the last day. And you would be in the situation of a total collapse only if you've not acted on time. So I think acting on time is the most important thing that all of us need to do. Because once there is a social infrastructure crisis, neither you nor the government can do anything about it. At that time, you just need to stay put. Someone comes and picks you up. But I think all of that can be avoided if you act 15 days ahead and use your common sense to address the problem.
I can add to this, rightly said Ashish, and I can add to this, the old school always has something, it never gets, really speaking, outdated with time in some ways. So I often, when even today, when I travel overseas, for example, it's an old time habit. So it doesn't make sense to I don't depend on my credit cards or alone. So I still carry, I still carry some amount in cash. So some I put in my handbag, another one, some in my suitcase. Like that, I divide and keep it for emergencies. So the learning, and it's a very serious learning, is this, these kind of situations are very rarely one likely to get stuck in. But one learning, if at all you want to avoid, in case of a total breakdown, is not to depend only on your electronic or digital, currency. Also carry, cash, some in hand and some in your hotel room.
Fair enough, Gigi. That's an important point. So you can actually be modern if you're old school in this matter. You can save a lot of trouble and heartache. Okay, so all right, this is an interesting question by Sachin Deshmukh. He wants to ask, being a foreigner at foreign land where geopolitical tensions are high, some basics required in conduct protocol while interacting with the government officials and army. Interesting.
Well, stay away as much as you can from them. That's one advice, because if you're stuck in a geopolitical in a country, always maintain some very practical tips. Is this that because we are in another country, that's not our country. So we are either visiting or residing in whichever context. So we don't really know what side of the political views the person we are talking to, be it a government official or be it a bureaucrat, anybody for that matter, even an ordinary citizen, even the business associate that you've gone down to meet. So even in ordinary times, few things that you always absolutely avoid, is making a country specific or a gender specific or a religion specific statement. And you always maintain a very, very in terms of your communication, you always should have control over your communication in terms of only focus on the purpose, whether you are a tourist there or you are there on a business or you are simply a temporary resident. So just stay on your focus, don't take any sides, and keep your views to yourself.
Fair enough. So something which we are used to, very, very unabashedly, fearlessly used to exhibiting and sharing.
No,
keep your views to yourself.
Yes, very important. We should be very cautious, especially in the alarming times like this. Right now, there's a total division within the countries. Even within Europe or even within North America, you will go. So we hear one side of the press, but the fact is this: there are people who talk about other side within that country itself. So we should, really speaking, stay absolutely quiet about it, focus on our purpose, and that's it.
So basically,
I think Ajayji, you should start seeing Fox News as much as CNN.
By the way, I go through both, and as I do spend some time on the UK and Australia and all the newspapers, so that half an hour to an hour every day really helps.
Yeah.
So who's the cunning fox amongst them in that case?
I think it'll be. I just advise not to.
Yeah. QED, mission accomplished. Right. So in that case, so let's stick to the point. I think I should also stick to the questions only. I should not go left or right, not deviate. So the next question is by Mr. S.G. Bhaskar, and he wants to ask important things to remember. Okay, this is an important one. It was also there in our speaking points. Now, some important things to remember when family is traveling along, women, children, elders.
Mm-hmm. It depends on where you're going to, and first and foremost, what comes to my mind is that you must ensure each of the family members, for example, is as is the habit. One family member, maybe the father will carry all the passports and all the currency, all the cards, and all the hotel reservations. Everything is normally with one person. So normally what one should do is all your travel documents, all your visa documents, all your the documents related to your travels, whether it's hotel accommodation or otherwise, along with some important phone numbers, be it of your relations in India, or be it your connections or friends or people you're visiting in that particular destination. So you should make, let's say there are 4 family members, husband, wife, and 2 kids. So you should make 4 sets of each, and they should be independently with each family member, so that should any one of them separate out for any reason, they know who to call. And that particular we have what is known as when 5 friends are going in different directions, so they say in the evening we are going to have meeting point, in the evening we are going to meet here. So there should be one phone number which should be with all the 4 family members, which each person knows to contact in case of emergency, in case they separate out. So having all set of documents copied and be with every person, that's important. I think the most important advice I can give. Second is this, that one should always cater to a situation, because passport is something we leave back at the hotel. So perhaps the situation you could see, especially if you're traveling with a family, perhaps putting it in the safety box in the hotel, not in the room, where at the hotel, you could take a locker and perhaps put it there. That might be the second advice. Third is, of course, yes, like the entire itinerary with everybody. This is what comes to your mind. And yes, we often do that mistake again, that the entire digital currencies with one person. So perhaps it will make sense to have digital currency also, and some cash also divided among all members. Perhaps kids could have less, but even they could have a debit card of $100, $300, $400 with a couple of $100 cash at any point of time with them, so that in case of emergency, they are not stuck and they know what to do.
Great, fantastic. So in line with the age-old adage, sharing is caring when it comes to family. So don't put all your passports in one basket. All right, fair enough. So we just have last two questions now. And okay, so one is again immigration based. So this is by Ms. Sarita Kulkarni. What are the repercussions of executives traveling to North America for work, immigration, holiday because of this conflict? Any, if any?
Not at all.
Not at all. So
Not at all. You just need to look at, depending on which port of entry you have in North America, specifically in USA, depending on the port of entry, you just need to check with your airlines, the airline that you are taking, about the COVID protocol that particular port of entry has. So you follow that particular protocol. That's the only caution that you need to have if you're traveling to North America. There's no other protocol.
And also there's no any issue of deviated
No.
any
But if you're
airspace.
flying to North America, no, not at this stage, because you'll go via Western Europe. You can or you can go via Middle East. So it's only when you're going towards Pacific, I think, whichever whenever you have to travel on the top of Russia to reach any destination, you could add on 2 to 3 hours.
Fair enough. So now we're coming to the down to the last question. It's an interesting question. Though we have already discussed a part of it. It's by Mr. Rahul Khatri, and he wants to ask that, it seems as if 100+ countries are against Russia. We had seen the resolution in the voting at the UN too. So it's been a month of war already. So how long do you feel this would last? And how will this entire thing pan out? And if I can just add a part from my side, we know how various leaders, when cornered, they react or lash. So going by that also, if there are 100+ countries against Russia, how do you think this is going to pan out?
I think I responded to that question, unless Ashish wants to add something to that.
Well, not really. As we said, when you say there are 100+ countries against Russia, the other 100 are probably not so much against it or just maintaining a neutral stance. So the glass is half full at this point in time. This conflict is likely to drag on for a few months because there are, I would say, gaps in terms of expectation management on both sides. There is a diplomacy vacuum, and strong arming at this point is probably not the best strategy. So I would say there is at least 6 to 12 months of pain in this whole affair, if not more.
Fair enough. So 6 months at least of pain. All right, fair enough. So with that, I think the questions have ended, and we can just get into our last possible signing off comments, if we can do that. So we can start with Ashish ji, your last 30 seconds of signing off comments.
Well, I think I continue to believe that Indian entrepreneurs have a very strong case and opportunity in Europe, and they should now make use of it. There's a huge learning from the Chinese entrepreneurship that we've seen in the last 2 decades. And this is the right time. There are gaps. come ahead and fill it.
I'm in full agreement. I'll just add to it that do not step back from taking a decision to relocate, take temporary residency or permanent residency to a destination of your choice just because you feel that it's going to get delayed. So the only consequence of this entire situation is, if earlier things were happening in a year's time, right now things might be happening in 18 months time, 24 months time, irrespective, the one in the queue is the one who's likely to get the visa. So you have to be in the queue. So take the decision, whichever category you want, whether it's a golden visa, RBI, CBI, that's residency by investment, citizenship by investment, or a simple entrepreneur startup, whichever way you want. So getting into the queue and taking the step is the most important thing. Sooner or later, you'll get it if you're eligible.
I think just to add there, expanding businesses does not mean you moving lock, stock, and barrel with your family. And when I keep referring to China, that I keep referring to the fact that they've not moved in. What they've done is they've expanded their businesses using the golden visa route. So even if you're someone who looked at a lot of the millions of very affluent families in India who would potentially not like to move at all because they're very comfortable. But at the same time, they run businesses which could become 2x, 4x, 10x if they expanded their market horizon. That is the gap. There's no dearth or gap in the employment and the moving section of the Indian society. And I don't think the demand is ever going to come down. If anything, it's only going to go up. I think the gap exists in the community, which does not want to move, but it's leaving a huge opportunity untapped by not going for it at this point in time.
Great. So I think if one single purpose, if this program of ours today can really achieve, is help people understand and help people widen their vision, their global vision. And if even, a dozen people can harness the golden visa route just because of this program, I think it will be fantastic. I think it will be mission accomplished for WAFinar number 26. So with that, I would like to thank our experts in the house, our WAF gurus, as we call them, the top-notch people in the industry, in their sphere of life. So Ajay ji, thanks a ton. And Ashish ji, thanks a ton, right from our hearts. And Kiran ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Anuj. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to Ashish ji and Ajay ji. They said so many wise things, which I completely agree with, because I was also monitoring the situation. And Ashish ji rightly said that the government had issued the advisory long before the tension began, and people mocked it. Learn to take your own government seriously. Your government is concerned about you. Your government did its best to bring them back home, whoever was stuck in this crisis. And instead of ranting and criticizing that this was not right and that was not right, learn to appreciate what they did, because many people didn't even get that. Fantastic tips from Ajay ji about international travel, how to play it safe, and very important thing he said, please keep your political opinions to yourself. Don't add fuel to the fire. And no need to be so brave on the social media. Best to put your own selfies there. So, this is something, well, this tension will get over. And we all know that wars are triggered off essentially because of some economic reasons. And they cannot even carry on for long due to economic compulsions. This will pass over. It will tide over. But it will leave us a lot wiser. And I'm once again thankful on a personal note to WAF for bringing up such good issues that, whether you're in the auto industry or not, this is helpful to everybody. So once again, I too would like to thank Ajay ji and Ashish ji, and of course, Anuj ji for getting this platform, across to people globally, and our wonderful dear friend Jerry behind the show who puts it all together. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was delightful spending the evening with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thanks a ton. And thanks to you, Kiran ma'am, for summarizing it so well and for introducing our experts in the house brilliantly. And I would fail in my duty if I don't thank Ajay ji for giving this idea of doing this program on this theme. And we at WAF are really humbled, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because till date, we scan media, so closely. We haven't come across a single media vehicle covering this kind of a discussion and sharing such priceless sutras for people's upliftment and development. Thanks a ton.
Thank you.
Team WAF rocks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jerry, sir.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend. Take care.